So, what are three things that you think, or a couple things that people ought to know so that they can come from a place of compassion versus judgment?
Mm. Well, okay, so the first common misperception a lot of people have is that an addict is someone that's just weak. They're morally weak. They're not strong enough to handle their addiction. Completely false. It's literally a disease. It's recognized as such by the American Medical Association, and basically across the board, it's chronic, progressive, and fatal. That's the three criteria you need. Period. So I'm not going to give a lecture on the biology of addiction, but, just for people to have a very basic understanding, it's a disease of the brain. So when an addict crosses that, there's a difference between abuse and addiction. And I think that's what confuses a lot of people because they look very similar, but an abuser is able to stop and they stop for good.
Mm-hmm.
The addict, no matter how bad the circumstances have gotten, legally, physically, whatever, they cannot stop.
Ah,
The difference is, and these go back to scientific studies started in the 50s with rats, and I'm not an advocate of animal testing, but this was back in the day, and it has given us a pretty clear light. But so essentially, the neocortex for an addict, and there is not a reason yet as why someone is an addict and why someone isn't. But what does happen with the addict is our neocortex, where our functioning, our consciousness, that takes a back seat to our midbrain or our reptilian brain,
right.
which essentially is now in charge. And the reptilian brain
Ah,
is our old fight or flight, our
right.
old caveman kind of brain. So when they're in addiction, we're coming from a place of survival instincts.
Mm,
So that's why they say the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, syndrome. Someone who can be a very beautiful person, once they're caught in those grips, they're completely different. They're back in
right.
their animalistic instincts,
Right.
and and it gets to the point where they're not using for pleasure or joy. It's a survival instinct, even
Ah,
more than life itself.
yeah.
These experiments with rats, they would keep doing cocaine and starve themselves to death. Or there's another one with where every time they press down, they'd get electrocuted, and they would keep doing it until they ended up killing themselves.
Mm,
So it's literally a brain disease. So it's not that addicts are morally deficient. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a bottle in my hand while I was using, and I would cry because I did not want to drink it. I would look at it, and as much as I'd want to throw it away, dump it down the drain, I couldn't. It was beyond my control. And until someone's been in that experience, I get that it's hard to understand. And even someone who's listening right now might be like, yeah, right. No, that's the God's honest truth.
yeah.
It really is beyond your control. You're a slave to the disease until you get into a detox, you flush it out of your system, and then from there, I highly recommend going to a treatment so you can get a little ground. As you were saying, it's not easy to start loving yourself right away, but if you're in a treatment facility, you're under care. You
Right.
have people that are helping you start to get to that place in your journey.
Yeah.
Um, but so I know I'm straying a bit from your question, but that's something I would love for people to have a better
Yeah.
understanding of. Like we were
Yeah.
talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman,
Yeah.
the guy that had it all, brilliant actor, everything, and ends up overdosing.
Mm,
It's and leaving kids behind. And I'm sure it's not because he wanted to.
yeah.
That's just the reality of addiction.
Yeah. It just breaks my heart. It
Yeah,
really just
sure
because
does.
it's. I guess I really didn't understand until just recently when as a result of doing this interview, I've been kind of digging into it, and you just don't understand. It's just out of
Really
ignorance.
quickly, I know a lot of those judgmental people that you were asking about, are not judgmental, but yeah, judgmental, like you're weak. A lot of that comes from fear, because they have loved ones or they know people and they don't understand it. And when we don't understand things, it's we're scared of the unknown. So it's
Yeah.
easiest to kind of not really look into it. That person's weak. So I have compassion for those people. I understand why they
Yeah.
are the way they are. I wish they would change, and that's what
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
trying
not
to do,
judging
hopefully.
people who are judging either. It's just it
Right,
is what
right,
it is. Like they're just
right.
either they're it's not a relevant fact for them at this moment because they haven't. Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something or found something that you'd like to try out. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.